In the shadows of history lie rituals that both terrify and fascinate us. Altars of stone. Silent crowds. The sound of a heart that beats its last for the gods. For centuries, human sacrifice has been painted as the ultimate act of barbarism, a savage stain on the dawn of civilization. But was it truly madness, or something more? Behind the myths of blood and terror lies a deeper truth, one of faith, fear, and the desperate human need to understand forces greater than ourselves. Join me as we uncover the real story, beyond horror, beyond legend, and separate myth from ritual in the ancient practice of human sacrifice. Few subjects in history provoke as much fascination and unease as human sacrifice. The very idea strikes deep, the notion that people once offered human lives to gods, spirits, or forces beyond comprehension. Across continents and centuries, the stories echo: altars stained with blood, priests in solemn ceremony, victims chosen for honor or doom. But behind the horror and the myth lies a far more complex reality. Human sacrifice was never just senseless killing, it was a reflection of how early societies understood life, death, and the divine. It revealed what people feared most, and what they valued enough to die for. The origins of human sacrifice reach back into prehistory, before the written word. To ancient peoples, the world was a mystery of unpredictable forces, rain that gave life, storms that destroyed, plagues that killed without warning. To survive, humans sought to communicate with these unseen powers. Offerings of food, animals, and eventually humans became ways to maintain balance between the mortal and the divine. Anthropologists believe that in early agricultural societies, the logic of sacrifice was deeply tied to the cycles of nature. Just as seeds were buried in the earth to bring new life, so too, they believed, could the death of a person ensure the renewal of the land. Death and life were not opposites, they were part of the same sacred rhythm. In the cradle of civilization, early city-states practiced rituals that blurred the line between devotion and death. In ancient Sumer, the royal tombs of Ur reveal startling scenes: servants, soldiers, and attendants buried alongside their rulers, seemingly poisoned or strangled to follow their king into the afterlife. These were not acts of cruelty in their eyes, but of loyalty, ensuring that the ruler's court remained complete beyond the grave. In Egypt, similar echoes appear in its earliest dynasties. Archaeologists have found evidence that some pharaohs of the first dynasty were buried with sacrificed retainers, their graves carefully arranged around the royal tomb. Over time, these practices faded, replaced by symbolic offerings, small statues called shabtis that served the same purpose without bloodshed. Civilization, it seemed, was learning to substitute symbol for sacrifice. The image of the wicker man, a giant effigy filled with human victims, burned as an offering to pagan gods, is one of the most enduring and chilling symbols of ancient Europe. But is it truth or Roman propaganda? Julius Caesar, writing of his campaigns in Gaul, claimed that the Celts sacrificed criminals and prisoners in such a way, pleasing their gods with fire. Yet, modern historians question his motives. Rome had every reason to portray its enemies as barbaric, to justify conquest and domination. Archaeological evidence of mass ritual burnings is sparse, though isolated sacrifices, single individuals ritually killed and buried, have been found in peat bogs across northern Europe. Bodies preserved in the bogs of Denmark, Ireland, and England tell quieter stories. Victims like the famous Toland man were carefully placed, not dumped. They may have been offerings to the earth, symbols of renewal rather than wanton violence. The truth is more human and more tragic. No discussion of human sacrifice is complete without the Aztecs, whose rituals have become infamous in the modern imagination. At the heart of Tenochtitlan, the great pyramid of the sun god Huitzilopochtli stood as both temple and altar. According to Spanish chroniclers, thousands of captives were sacrificed during great festivals, their hearts offered to the sun to ensure its daily rebirth. But to the Aztecs, sacrifice was not cruelty, it was cosmic duty. They believed that the gods had sacrificed themselves to create the world, human blood was repayment, the energy that kept the universe alive. Warriors captured in battle were honored in death, their blood renewed the sun and their spirits joined the divine. Modern scholars debate the numbers recorded by Spanish conquistadors, suspecting exaggeration to justify conquest. Yet there is no doubt that ritual sacrifice was real, woven deeply into Aztec religion and statecraft. It was both faith and politics, awe and fear, a display of power meant to bind empire together. In the jungles of Central America, the ancient Maya practiced their own form of ritual sacrifice, though often with less bloodshed than the Aztecs. The famous ball game, Poctapoc, carried deep religious meaning. In some ceremonies, the losing team, or in rare cases, the victorious captain, was offered to the gods. Other rituals involved bloodletting rather than death. Nobles pierced their tongues or genitals to offer drops of blood as communion with the divine. Human sacrifice existed, yes, but it was rare, reserved for moments of cosmic importance, such as the death of kings or great celestial events. Human sacrifice was not limited to one region. In sub-Saharan Africa, oral traditions and early records speak of kings who were buried with servants, or who offered captives to gods of fertility and war. Among the Ashanti and Dahomey, royal funerals sometimes demanded human lives to accompany the ruler beyond the grave. In ancient China, the Shang dynasty left behind oracle bones and tombs filled with sacrificed retainers, an echo of the same beliefs that once guided Sumer and Egypt. In Japan, early myths describe the burying alive of servants under bridges and castles to appease angry spirits, a practice that later evolved into symbolic offerings. Even in the Pacific, some island cultures offered human lives to volcanoes or gods of the sea, believing that only through such gifts could the natural world remain in balance. As civilizations matured, sacrifice changed. The Greeks and Romans inherited ancient traditions but gradually refined them. Animal sacrifices became the norm, bulls, sheep, and goats taking the place of humans. In rare moments of crisis, however, even Rome turned to blood. Historical records tell of times when prisoners or slaves were buried alive to appease the gods of the underworld, particularly during military disasters. Yet by the late Republic, these practices were condemned as archaic and savage. Philosophy and reason had begun to challenge superstition. When Christianity rose and spread through the empire, it brought a profound shift, one divine sacrifice, once and for all. The cross replaced the altar, and ritual killing became a symbol, not an act. Humanity had, at least outwardly, turned from blood to faith. Many tales of human sacrifice were exaggerated, or invented, by outsiders seeking to portray others as barbaric. The Romans did it to the Celts, the Spaniards to the Aztecs, and even modern historians have repeated such claims without question. Yet to deny all instances would be equally false. Human sacrifice did occur, but rarely as wanton slaughter. It was almost always bound to a deep belief system, a sacred exchange between life and divinity. In every culture, as societies grew more complex, these rituals transformed. Substitutes emerged: animals, statues, symbolic gestures. What once required blood could now be done with words, offerings, or prayer. Humanity was not shedding its reverence, only changing its expression. Today, the idea of human sacrifice feels distant, unthinkable, yet echoes remain. In the metaphors of sacrifice for a cause, in the willingness to die for faith, freedom, or nation, the ancient instinct persists in new forms. The urge to give up something precious, even life itself, for something greater than oneself lies deep in the human spirit. Modern archaeology continues to uncover new evidence, separating myth from truth, ritual from rumor. Each discovery reminds us that the past was not a world of monsters, but of people trying, in their own way, to understand existence, order, and the will of the gods. To look back on human sacrifice is not to condone it, but to understand it. It reveals how our ancestors saw the universe, alive, unpredictable, demanding awe and respect. For them, sacrifice was a bridge between the seen and the unseen. For us, it is a reminder of how far we have come, and how deeply the desire for meaning still drives us. Human sacrifice was not only about death, it was about faith, fear, and the fragile hope that life could continue if the right price was paid. In the end, it was humanity's first attempt to bargain with eternity. Human sacrifice. A word that once meant terror, and yet, in the eyes of those who lived it, it meant hope, devotion, and survival. Across time, we've moved from blood-stained altars to symbolic offerings, but the impulse remains, to give something of ourselves to what we believe is greater. History is not just about what happened, it's about understanding why it happened. And sometimes, the darkest rituals reveal the deepest truths about what it means to be human. If you've enjoyed this journey into the ancient world, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories that explore the mysteries of our past. Until next time, stay curious, and keep seeking the truth behind the myth.